Um, the permit for the 40B is what we're going to be discussing tonight. In a moment, I'm going to give it over to Kevin, who's going to take us through what the process is and how we've gotten to it. I just want to point out that tonight is not a meeting for public comment. There will be none. I also want to make clear, as I alluded to, the fact that Lynn Bermudez and Cam Brown are not here tonight should not be of concern, as Kevin and I can both attest to. They have been thoroughly involved in the composition of the letter that we will be looking at tonight that we're sending to the state. I have spoken with both of them multiple times. Kevin has spoken with both of them multiple times. For all I know, Raphael and Boyd have spoken to them multiple times over the course of this. So the product that we're going to be looking at tonight is the result of the effort of all 5 members of the board, Kevin, and some advisory input from the planning board as well. So despite the fact that I am the only signatory to this letter, it is effectively a letter from the board that has involved all members of the board and many other people as well. I will also just generally remind people that this is a very early step in what is going to be a long process. I know on our agenda it says it's a comprehensive permit, but we are still at a very preliminary stage in this entire process. We're going to discuss that more coming up in a little bit, but those are just kind of the ground rules that I wanted to put out there and the kind of basic information I wanted to make people make sure that they were aware of. And with that, I'll start us on this process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Select Board and members of the public. Kevin Artuni, Town Administrator. I'm just going to give a very quick synopsis of where we are relative to the project. We received formal notification from the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development, that they received an application, a preliminary application for a Chapter 40B comprehensive permit for a project known as Emerson Homes, which will be being proposed to be located in Topsfield behind the Emerson Center. It is a affordable housing project with age restriction for 62 and older. It's 44 units, 1 market rate unit, 8 units at 30% AMI, and the remaining at 60% average median income AMI. And so with the notification that we did receive, the town has, the select board representing the town has a 30-day window to respond to the letter and the preliminary application. This is, as I understand it, after talking with members from the state and other people who've worked on similar projects, the letter is first and foremost an acknowledgement of our receipt of the project. As this is a 40B project, it does become a state-run project through their department, and state jurisdiction ultimately applies. And as such, local zoning also is not applicable to the project. And so the town has certain limitations, if not almost complete limitations, on the direction of the project goes. However, we do have an opportunity to at least express to the state what we're aware of and what general concerns, if we have any, we might have, as well as our general support potentially for the project as well. And in this case, after Emerson Homes and the Caleb Group as a developer had a public meeting a month ago over at the Emerson Center, where we had over 75 residents of Topsfield present. It was about a 90-minute meeting. They provided feedback and had a question and answering session. Select board and myself were there. We took and heard from the neighbors. We heard from the developer, and that coupled with responses that we've received from the community, as well as a request for the planning board to have this application or to pass this application to them so that they are aware of it, but also to let us know from a process standpoint and or any glaring issues that might be from their perspective, ask them to share those with us as well. So the letter that we've penned, the draft letter that we are looking to provide to the state tomorrow, as that is our 30-day window, tries to incorporate the best we could, different perspectives that we've heard from the community. Also, what we know of the project from our conversations with the developer and what's been provided to us and to the community, as well as our departments who have also reviewed this project as presented thus far, our public safety team, our board of health, our conservation, who've at this point, similar to the planning board, there is limited information that we do have, but we do have general ideas of what the project will look like. We also have certain commitments from the developer and what they are willing to do to help mitigate, such as some of the neighbor concerns that we've heard and impacts to the neighbors. So based on prior conversations with the select board, this is the draft letter incorporating some of the considerations that we've had, that the select board has had relative to the project. And again, this letter will be the town's opportunity via the select board to provide at this time a general support or non-support for the project, and again the concerns that we might have. So the hope for tonight is that the select board will have a chance to weigh in on the language as presented, and that we can come to a good place of understanding with it and be able to provide the letter first thing tomorrow or at some point tomorrow, depending on how many edits, if any, are needed, and make sure that we have provided them with the town's perspective on the project as presented today. Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I will reiterate, just because I want to make sure everyone is clear on this. And for those of you who you're all able to get on board docs and see our draft of the letter. Actually, is our draft of the letter available for public content? We've got so much in there. I'm looking for it. But we've also received a lot of input from the community, both via handwritten mail or at least hand-delivered mail and email. Everyone who has sent us anything, it's been seen by the entire board and is included here in public content. So it's effectively part of the public record. And so I guess I will open up to Mr. Jackson or McDonald, if you had anything to say at this point in terms of the letter that's now our draft letter.
Well, I will say that I'm in agreement with that draft letter. The question I have for you, Kevin, when is the 30 days up? Is that tomorrow?
We want to get it in by the end of tomorrow.
Okay. I'm in general agreement with the letter. I think it points out some of our concerns. I think it points out the fact that this might be a reasonable kind of a project for this piece of property, with some limitations, with some changes. There are some concerns about certain issues like septic and traffic and access and egress and those kinds of things. And there's a whole bunch of stuff, in my opinion, that is not terribly defined yet by Caleb or the architect. And we're waiting for some of those responses. And until we get those kind of responses, I'm not sure that we're prepared to really vote yes or no, and that certainly is not the purpose of the meeting tonight. But yeah, I don't have a problem sending that letter back, because it basically says we are in a receipt of your comprehensive application, and I think it's time to move forward. Like Marshall said, we've got a long way to go.
I guess I should, for those people who can't see it on board docs. I'm not going to read the entire letter, but I'll give you an overview of the basics of what the letter says. It acknowledges receipt of the letter from the state, which triggered this process. It acknowledges that the town knows that and supports the idea of affordable housing in Topsfield, though we point out both age-restricted and non-age restricted of the age-restricted variety. We are all, I suspect, acutely aware of that magical 10% number, which we fall under, which makes us susceptible to 40B developments that go around our zoning. And ideally, we're looking for a project that could put us over that. We basically say that this current proposal, acknowledging that it is only a current proposal, has a generally appropriate design. They've told us it'll be built in an environmentally sustainable fashion, that the site is, and again, these are all generalities. I know that there are a lot of specifics that we're going to get into through this process. Generally, that the site is appropriate for this sort of development. Some of the items that we call out as questions, concerns, items of particular note, again, is that 10%. We are looking for a project that gets us above that 10%. We have heard from our emergency services folks that the design must incorporate a turnaround in the parking lot large enough for a fire truck. We highlight the need for analysis on the traffic impact actually multiple times in the letter, because that is one of the main concerns that people have with the single entrance exit to this development being proposed on High Street, and what effect that'll have on traffic in that area. It does not, at this point, we say the proposal include adequate information around the septic system, and perk tests to the best as we know have not been done. And we do have a preference that more market rate apartments be put in there. We note that the Topsfield Planning Board unofficially reviewed the plans. We, the Select Board, basically asked the Planning Board to take a look at what is out there and give us their opinion on it, and they did that, and a lot of their concerns mirrored our concerns. And that at the end, while there are many questions and possible concerns and a lot more questions that need answering, we, the Select Board, generally are supportive of this development. Is that, gentlemen, a fair encapsulation of what this letter holds in it?
I agree. It's the concept is something that we generally support. This is our chance to get our input at the very beginning of the process. I think it is important for folks who are listening to understand we are not at the point of approving or disapproving. And when it gets to that point, there will be much more work to do. But this is much more an acceptance or not of the concept. And the application that we saw did have several pieces missing, maybe some conflicting information. We'd like to see that rectified, and I'm sure it will be. We're aware of those, and I do want to thank the folks who have written to us to point some of those things out as well. But this is not for us necessarily to sign off on the project at all. It's more about whether we think it is okay to move forward.
Go ahead, Mr. Kevin. Mr. Kevin, as I'm now calling you.
That is. I would just want to emphasize. I think it's really important what Mr. McDonald said, that it is. They're looking for a general idea of where the town is from a concept standpoint, because there are certain things missing in the application that we can all agree that make it difficult to definitively understand what the final product will look like. They've done a really good job thus far of moving the project forward and sharing that information publicly. But because this is a 40B, the town will not be approving it. The jurisdiction falls under the state. So the state ultimately will decide whether this is a project that moves forward or not. And again, because it's a 40B, because we're lower than the 10%, our zoning bylaws do not provide any protections or ability to stop the project. What our hope is through this is to make sure that on the record, we are identifying certain things that we want to have further conversation and further elements explored as the state goes through their process on behalf of the town. Some they may not. It's really at the state's discretion, but we'll work as closely with the state as we possibly can through that process to ensure that these elements, as well as with the developer, ensure that these elements are considered and incorporated. And there are some generalities at this point, as we talked about, but one of the other things I want to emphasize is that in our conversations, there has been a commitment from the developer for mitigation of certain types as the design continues to develop, dark sky night lighting, things of that, where to locate certain pieces of equipment on site to limit any impact to neighbors, tree plantings, things of that nature, to ensure that any neighbors that might be impacted, any of those impacts are mitigated as fully as possible. And that's where we will go as strong as possible as this process moves forward to ensure that those considerations are just that, considered.
And just kind of one of the reasons I personally am, and I'm going to use the word generally supportive of this project is, we're, I think, all kind of very aware of the two potential projects that we're looking at in Topsfield right now. This one and the one on Perkins Road that they call Perkins Landing. And just as a compare contrast, in this case, I think that this is a better site for a development by far. The impact on the neighborhood is dramatically less than I think the one on Perkins Row is. I think it is more an appropriate site. And most of all, we have a developer who, to Kevin's point, they don't need our approval. They don't. I mean, ultimately, we are under that 10% threshold, which means they just need the approval of the state and they could plow ahead without ever talking to us, as the folks over on Perkins Landing have tried to do. That is not what this developer is doing. So whatever issues and questions and other kind of dangling things that we have with them, they have shown at least an initial willingness to engage and communicate and talk and work with the town, with the abutters, with the community. And so in terms of developments over which we have no control and are unable to stop, this is about as good a one as we can get in terms of both the site and the developer who's involved. And so while, again, there are tons of questions and a fair share of concerns, we are in a position where we have a development and a developer who is willing to work with us, even if they are not required by law to. And I think that's important to note as we're moving forward with this.
I would just like to say, and I'd like to emphasize again, and it's been said twice already, I personally, and I'm not speaking for the board at the moment, but I personally am in general agreement with moving forward with this project with a lot of unanswered questions, and where and how those questions get answered is important to me, and it will result in my final analysis or my final opinion about whether we move forward or not. But in general, I'm ready to move forward with it. As I've tried to imply, there are some downsides to it, and those all need to be reconciled, in my opinion, before we can really put a rubber stamp on this thing, voicing approval.
All right, I would ask then at this point if we're ready for a motion. I will note that the motion makes mention of both the select board and the planning board, but it's really only the select board. So whichever of these two fine gentlemen makes the motion, please adjust it accordingly.
I would vote to make a motion to vote to approve the letter from the Topsfield Select Board and the Topsfield Planning Board.
Boyd, you're already not listening. Boyd.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. What's up?
Boyd, try again. Try again. It's just from the Select Board. It's not from the Planning Board.
Okay. Vote to approve the letter from the Topsfield Select Board in response to the 40B comprehensive permit Emerson Homes as presented.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
This is a motion just to discuss it more, correct?
No, this is a motion to approve the letter. We do have discussion opportunity after a motion. So if the discussion is to continue, you are safe seconding it, and then we can continue discussion.
Then is with that caveat, I will second.
All right. Is there any more discussion?
There is.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay, so some of the things that were in the detail, I under point number 1 about the census data, do we know how far off we are? I know we don't know, but do we have an idea? Like, we're not asking them to double the size of this thing. It's a few units perhaps, or?
We do not, and I'll let Kevin answer. He's going to say the same thing I'm going to say, which is we do not have a precise answer to that question. We are certainly endeavoring to get a precise answer to that question. And in the event, and this is by no means anything that we're surely going to ask, in the event that we were going to ask this to be increased in size at all to get us over that number, it would only be if it were a tiny bit, like if it were 4 units, 2 or 3 units, or something like that. We are most certainly not going to say, oh yes, add a whole nother wing to this building to get us over 10%. If it came to that, then we would just say, well, we're still under 10%, but we're ever closer. The ideal would be that the project as currently constituted would get us there, and that's not out of the question. But the back of the envelope math says that the project as currently constituted would likely still leave us a little bit short. Have I summarized that well, Kevin?
Yes. Well, we did. We don't have the 2020 census, which we should soon. That will dictate, based on the state and how they determine market versus non-market within our community and the new homes, one by one, they add them up, and basically they'll give us an actual number of what our percentages of affordable units. We currently have, from the 2010 census, 2,157 units. 187 of those are affordable. We estimated, Martha Morrison, the planning board, and I sat down, we estimated, based on projects that have happened since 2010, another 166 units of market housing. So if you take that plus the 44 units this project would add, you have 2,367 units. And if you add the 43 affordable to that, it makes 230 affordable units in town. And so if you do the quick math on that, it's 9.7%. So we are within incredibly close striking distance of hitting the magic 10%. But I preface all that is very much back of the envelope. We won't, and it's the official numbers from the state, which should come out soon, that will determine if this project as presented reaches the 10% threshold, which it could. Our math isn't necessarily the final math. So that's one of for the purposes of that point being here, the hope is that we can have definition to what the state will determine, because this letter is to the state and they have the data. The ask is that they help expedite our understanding of whether this project would help, it gets us to 10% or not.
That's vital, I think. And the last line in that paragraph is very good from my perspective, that it's important that this project help the town achieve that 10% threshold, or even get us above it. Should we change it to get us closer to and or above, or get us above? the 10% threshold or reach? I'm just wondering if, no matter what, it's going to help us achieve that 10%.
Yeah.
Right. So the second paragraph, it says the town recognizes and supports the need to add additional affordable housing units in Topsfield, both age restricted and non-age restricted, ideally meeting and surpassing the 10% target.
Yep. Okay. I was looking under bullet point 1. It is important that this project help the town achieve the 10% threshold. No matter what, the town, that will help us. Well, it'll help us get closer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good with that. I know we've addressed traffic in many places. I think it is important to state, and for my understanding, Kevin, you can tell me if I'm wrong, the project is not responsible for fixing our current traffic situation, right? I've a lot of the feedback I've gotten is that they said go to the state and get it fixed. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that their responsibility is to make sure it does not get worse as a result of this project.
That's
okay.
Correct.
I think that's very important to notice. It's a fine distinction. I get that. And then let's see, one more on these bullet points. I did
one, if I can interrupt, one quick thing on that. While, and I believe that this is what we learned, if you didn't already know it, as I didn't already know it, during the community presentation, is while they're not saying that they're going to pay for anything, everything you said is correct, that existing problems are ours to fix, but the existence of this development does potentially make us eligible for grants that we would not otherwise be eligible for. So while it's not the developer's money, it is also not our money, and our only portal to getting that money would be basically through the development's existence. So it's kind of convoluted, but in a way, and it's all, in theory, there is the possibility that this development could help us fix nearby traffic problems that exist right now today.
Thank you. That is a great thing to understand, that by making things worse, they might be able to make things better.
In a way, yes.
Well, they did say at their community presentation that they would hire a traffic engineer to study that issue. And They said if the town is not satisfied with that, the town can name a separate traffic advisory and they would pay for it. Okay, so they would be willing to accept a second opinion on a traffic study, and that's a point worth considering.
Absolutely.
Mr.
Chairman, go ahead.
So, the specific grant, that there's possibly a number of grants, but the grant that could be attached to a project, that a housing project such as this, is the MassWorks grant. And last time I checked, it's up to $5 million for a project. So, if this project does find that there's a significant impact, which it might, we don't know until the data comes back with the traffic study that's happening currently. They hired the traffic consultant in July. We hope to get those results back, or they do, I should say. They hope to get the results back this month, if not early next month. If that comes back and then it's peer reviewed and it shows that there is that impact and it is, it's justified, that is an example of a specific grant that's out there that we could potentially apply, that because this project, as Mr. Hook said, it's attached to the project, allows us the ability to apply for those funds to look at and then potentially make improvements.
I'd just like to add a detail point. There's no question that the entrance and exit to that facility is very near a very busy intersection. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. But let me tell you that I live in an area where we have 75 units of plus 55 people at Great Hill. And we all enter and exit via Great Hill Drive onto Ipswich Road. And I will tell you that it is almost never a traffic jam trying to get in or out onto a busy street like Ipswich Road. Now, admittedly, at certain times of the day, Main Street 97 is busier than Ipswich Road is. But I will tell you that here's 75 units, and now we're talking about half that size, and we never see a traffic jam up here. So I'm willing to study their traffic reports and move forward, but I'm not sure it's as big a deal as we might envision.
Yep. All right, Mr. McDonald, I know you weren't done.
If I could move on to number 6, the
Yes.
preference to incorporate more market rate apartments. I'm curious the logic behind that.
So
And wouldn't that go against our bullet point number 1?
it was one of the things that they that was discussed in this project before they landed on the number was the generality of how the project lays out. This project's going to be 60% AMI, 30% AMI with one market rate unit. Initial conversations we're looking at potentially adding additional market units. Primary reason for that is to try to help our people, our Topsfield people, who might be looking and would like to live in a location downtown in this place, but at the limitations of the AMIs might not be eligible. They might have too much income or too much assets to be eligible. And so by having more market rate, it could open up more opportunities for more people in Topsfield to have the opportunity to live in the facility. That was the initial intent. And it was mentioned to them and as such incorporated in the letter. But I do recognize the same thing you did, Mr. McDonald, that, we're going to be really close to that 10%. And if they decided to change that to another market unit or two, that gets us that much farther away.
I do feel like we're early enough in the process that we're effectively allowed to make competing suggestions. Like, we want this, but we may also want this, or you can choose one of the, or something. I mean, yes, you're 100% correct that they're in direct kind of opposition to each other, but at least we're on the record as saying both of those things. Ultimately, only one of them may be achieved probably in the end, or maybe neither, who knows? But at least by putting it out there as also something that we're considering, it's there right there at the beginning of the process.
I just feel like that gives them, they can point to this letter and as justification for whatever decisions they want, which again, it's not up to us. I fully understand that. But what is it then that the town is actually asking for?
I think it may just be as simple as the fact that that's bullet point number 6 versus bullet point number 1. And it only gets mentioned once versus multiple times. I certainly, at least personally, my number one goal of this project, other than being, put in a place that is as the least impact to the town and most notably the abutters, is that 10% mark, right? That's the most important thing. And I think we have made that clear to both the state and the developers. But if there is some way along the way where either we've determined that it would take so many units to get us to 10% that it's not feasible, or alternatively that we're already there and we have the opportunity to add some market rate on top of that, then that is a secondary or tertiary consideration. At least that's how I look at it.
Can we call it a secondary preference? Or should we? Because I fully agree with everything you just said.
Yep.
So I think we need to put that thinking on that bullet point. Because otherwise, I feel like they point to the letter and say, hey, we made it at 30% market and now market rate because the town asked us to.
Okay. I don't fundamentally have a problem with adding the word secondary in there, unless there's some reason of which I'm unaware that would cause us issues. Kevin seems to have thought on the question.
I don't have a problem with it. I just I just want to make sure that we don't make this thing so complicated that nobody will ever be able to agree with it.
Just thinking of a way we could word something differently, because I do understand your point, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Hook and Mr. Jackson.
Do you have, well, while he chews on that, Raphael, do you have anything else?
Yeah, on the next paragraph, so not a bullet point, express some concerns, including incomplete information. I think, well, I found it to, and again, I understand this is very preliminary. There wasn't just incomplete information. In some cases, it's conflicting, and in some cases, such as the reference to the Holmes grant, it's a premature assumption. So I would propose that we add the words conflicting or premature information and assumptions into that sentence.
So it would read DHCD and express some conflicting or premature.
No, some concerns, including incomplete, comma, conflicting, comma, or premature information and assumptions.
And there, you're in the paragraph that begins with in addition to Topsfield planning.
Yes.
Okay. It's well worded. I would just maybe ask if we decide that's language we want to use, to send that over, and I'll make sure I put it in directly as you'd like it, as we like it.
And I don't want to steal the audience here. So Boyd, no, I'm done. So Boyd, it's your turn.
I got to leave it to you guys. You're much more literary than I am, so I'm going to leave it to you guys. And I'm generally in agreement with what you're trying to do.
And I've already edited this letter like 5 times. So,
so are you back at the first draft now?
no, I don't know. I've had Kevin, I got this letter, 3 days ago, where we first started working on this. So, yeah, I feel like I'm a copy editor on this. We've put a lot into doing this, and Lynn and Cam, I'll just remind folks, have basically done the same process that we're doing one-on-one with Kevin. Yeah. So there's been a lot that's been put into this letter. So I think really we're down to we think it's important to add a word on bullet point 6, and Mr. McDonald's going to send his additional information for that second to last paragraph.
Yep.
Yes.
Number 6, what if I just started the sentence with if appropriate? Because then we have some flexibility with it. If appropriate, a preference to incorporate more market rate apartments within the project has been discussed. We could say discussed instead of requested.
Yes, I like that.
Sounds good to me.
And it doesn't matter what I think.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it does.
I think it's still good and just clear to call it a secondary preference to bullet point number 1. But
well, I mean, in as much as anyone's going to really nitpick this, and let me be clear, I don't think anyone is going to spend as much time on this letter as we are. I think the state's going to see like 3 things and then just stamp it received and throw it into a folder. But let's pretend for a moment that somebody was going to dissect and analyze to the extent we have. I feel like if you actually put the word secondary in there, that tells that gives them the leeway to say, well, they don't even care that much about it. So they could, because the only reason it's secondary to us is because we're more concerned about the 10%.
Absolutely.
But if this doesn't come towards the 10% and we're left saying, well, we're shy of 10%, then they could look at it and go, well, this other thing they didn't even care that much about. They like put it down at the bottom and called it secondary. So we're short of 10% and we're not going to add market rate. Again, I think that presumes a degree of dissection that nobody is going to do. But by saying in addition and or as appropriate, whatever that wording Kevin gave us, it doesn't actually put it into a second class thought quite as much, I think. And if we're being linguists here, has been discussed is sufficiently vague that we don't put an importance level on it.
If somebody asks, I think you need to define what it's brought by putting if appropriate. Then the question is, well, what becomes appropriate?
Yeah.
And then
And according to whom?
But then we get to have this conversation. So,
and if it gets to that, right? So what's the threshold? And if it's ever broached, I mean, the state, as Mr. Hook said, the level of impact that this may or may not have is to be determined. But it allows us at least to continue the conversation if it's appropriate. And if based on community feedback and the board's will, we can absolutely put it on the record and never speak of it again, or we could push forward if it's appropriate at the appropriate time, depending on what the final numbers fall out.
Okay.
all right. I'll ask again, any more discussion with those amendments or changes as discussed?
I've got a couple other comments, but I don't want to muddy the water any further. When we were dealing with 57 Perkins Row on another 40B project, there was significant effort put into the town's response to that development. And there was significant feeling about the fact that Mass Housing probably didn't even read it. And I'm of the opinion that we may be in the same situation here. I'm not sure they really care what we want. I'm not sure they might not even read this stuff. So I'm kind of a skeptic about the whole thing. The important thing about this letter, in my opinion, is it meets the 30-day deadline that we were given by the state.
Yep. And in many ways, to me, this is as much, while it is technically a letter to the state, we know the developer is going to read it as well. So this, to me, is as much, if not more, a letter to the developer than it is to, in fact, the state.
Well, and that's a good point, because in this case, we've got a developer that I think is willing to listen to us. At 57 Perkins Row, we had a developer that could have cared less.
Indeed, indeed. Is that it, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. Anything else from you, Mr. McDonald?
Nope.
So in that case, we're going to move to a roll call vote of a smaller sort than we used to have. Though I'm sure Mr. Jackson would remind us, how many years ago was it that the, as it was called then, Board of Selectmen was only 3 members?
In point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Are we then voting on the amended or an amended letter, right? So
yes. This is the motion basically as amended, with the adjustments that we've discussed here that Kevin will incorporate into the letter before he sends it out tomorrow.
So do we need to have another motion on that?
No, I think the motion is, because it says, well, now I've lost the page that it's on, as presented, which to me, I think incorporates the edits that we've discussed.
I think you need a motion to amend it.
Apparently, Mr. Gant says we need a motion to amend.
So
go ahead. Go ahead. No, Raphael, you do it.
I'll make a motion to amend the letter with the changes discussed and agreed upon.
I'll second.
I'm taking a moment to think about this. Well, Mr. Gant, since you're here and you know more about it than we do, is this what you say? You're saying that we need to amend, or is it we need to remake the initial motion to begin with and just include the language? Because I think this is what we need to do: is remake the initial or amend the initial motion.
If you just read the initial motion and at the end just add as amended.
Okay.
That's all you need to do, and then vote.
All right.
All right.
Agreed.
I'll make a motion to vote to approve the letter from the Topsfield Select Board in response to the 40B comprehensive permit, Emerson Homes, as presented and amended.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. I'm sure there's probably some flaw in the fact that we have this dangling other motion out there, but for our purposes, we'll fix it in post, as they say in TV. With that, I'll ask again, any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. McDonald?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Hook says aye. It passes unanimously with the quorum of the board as we have tonight. So Kevin will make those amendments and we will send that letter off to the state tomorrow. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And I know that a lot of you are only here this evening for that discussion. So if some of you drop off at this point, I will just thank you for your interest. And I recognize enough of those names to know that some of you folks contributed in emails or letters to the town as well.
Thank you.
It is certainly our intent to be as communicative with people as humanly possible as we move forward through this. And so I vow that we will continue to do that. With that, we're going to move on to the Master Plan Committee charter that we have discussed multiple times. We're not actually voting to approve this tonight, despite the fact that there's a motion in there. We're not. We will wait to do that in our next regular business meeting. So this is merely a question to the two of you. If at this point, and I guess to me as well, if at this point what you have in front of you meets our approval. It is effectively unchanged from the last time we discussed this. It may be 100% unchanged with the exception of, well, no, now that I look down, the changes haven't even been made on the composition of the committee. So I'll just leap right in and point out that I had hoped to see 2 select board members on there and see only 1. So Kevin.
This is an older version of the makeup and the composition we've discussed, and there's a draft that was circulated with Martha Morrison, chair of the planning board, around that makeup. We'll get that back up. They'll get the version up on board docs for your review.
Because this also doesn't have the sustainability person on it.
No, this is the older version that was put up there, but this is the last one I believe that was officially looked at on board docs. And
okay.
What we'll do is we'll put the updated one on. We're waiting. I was hoping to get final confirmation from the chair of the planning board before I put that out there, have that conversation one final time on that, which included the sustainability person, which included someone from Conservation Commission as well, and also a resident component, ensuring the numbers on that. I feel really good about the makeup of the charter. The composition is like the last bit that needs to be discussed. So when we post the updated version onto board docs, hopefully tomorrow we'll have that up. I would just ask that the board review that and provide any final feedback on that to me relative to that makeup. And then targeting July 25th's regular meeting to hopefully either further the discussion or even take a vote on establishing the charter. So reason it's on the work session for tonight is just to give an update and set the expectations and hopefully a timeline and schedule to move this forward. Hoping to have one final conversation with Martha Morrison, and then hopefully we'll be able to get that up on board docs tomorrow, and that'll be the version I ask everyone to look at before our meeting.
Okay. All right. So with that, I don't know that there's a whole lot to discuss other than I think we were generally in favor of what we saw last time around. Kevin, I would recommend if you could, after posting to board docs, if you can email the updated one to the board for review when we have that.
Yep, absolutely.
So with that, unless anyone has anything to say on the charter, I feel like we've already had this discussion. I don't want to squelch anybody's voice, but I would move on to the next item, which is the ARPA tabulator machines. I see Beth Willis has turned on her camera, but I'll start, as I always do, with you, Kevin.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Good evening again, everyone. Ms. Willis, thank you for joining us tonight. Clerk Willis and I are coming before the select board tonight to discuss an item that we will bring back to you hopefully on the 25th again. But being that we had the work session scheduled today, wanted to at least provide information around our balloting equipment. And the reason it's ARPA is we will plan to have a discussion with the ARPA working group in the coming next week. I believe we have our next meeting ahead of our next formal select board meeting, where we'll discuss as a working group whether or not this is something that would be supportive. The ballot tabulators that we're going to discuss, if that would be something that the working group would support. But the timing of the work session, wanted to flag this first and give Ms. Willis a chance to sort of discuss where we're at with our equipment and whether it's ARPA or something else. Today's purposes is really just to make sure you're aware of some of the issues we're facing, and that we might be coming to you shortly with a funding source. Hopefully we think it could be ARPA, and hopefully it will be, to help fund and expedite the purchase of some new equipment. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Wills. Thank you.
Beth, you're muted.
No, I think she's working on that. I feel like I should be playing the Jeopardy music. Go run into Kevin's office and just talk over his shoulder.
Down. Come on down, Beth, if you want.
Okay, finally.
There we go. There we go.
I pressed my share button too soon and then it froze me. So I apologize for that. Debbie, I do have some bullet points I wanted to put up for you. If Debbie could give me sharing.
She's working on it.
Yeah, no, she did it. So just hold on 1 second. Share. Screen. Okay, are you seeing the bullet point?
Not yet.
No. Oh, gosh. All right. Oh.
I'll take this moment to say, Raphael, I like that you took a cue from Cam and have taken your meeting outdoors.
Totally stole it.
Bringing it outdoors. I've decided to come to a far more technical place than I typically am to do this.
Wow.
Yes, this is the top of the lighting cage of the Channel 7 newsroom back there. The newsroom is down below from where I am. You can look down into it if you can look out that window. So if you've ever watched Channel 7 and there's that huge video wall in the back of it, I'm behind it right now. So. You can also tell that I have a long history in radio and that I know how to fill dead air with theoretically interesting things to say.
You're still at work.
I am. I'm working through the 11 o'clock news tonight. So, I was called in and I said, I can do it, but just know that I'm going to disappear for a little while in the middle of the shift. And so they were given a choice of me minus an hour and a half or so, or not me at all. And they chose this.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go.
Here we go. I think we're here.
All right, now you can see it, but I'm.
Well, actually, technically, we see a new screen, but it's not any bullet points.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not what you want, but it's different.
Yeah.
But it's nothing bad.
Leaving. Kevin may be coming down to try to assist.
Yeah. I don't know what you want to do.
We may just need you to voice over these bullets.
Maybe we'll just talk.
Yeah.
He wants to mime it out.
Oh, there's Kevin. Hey, Kevin.
I just did.
Oh, saw it for a moment.
We're getting closer.
Yeah,
Getting closer.
There
here we go.
Hey.
Usually I'm on the other end of this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never know what people have to do to make things share.
Yeah.
So, what I want to talk about is kind of an urgent need that we have that has just come up. The memory packs for our Optech Eagle tabulators are quickly coming to the end of their lifespan. It's an unexpected development. In Acushnet this spring, they were using the Eagles. They ended up having to hand count their local election because their memory packs failed, and the vendor, who was ES&S, had no new memory packs to give them. This is old, antiquated equipment, and the media is not made anymore. And the memory packs themselves have batteries in them, and the battery is not available anymore to put in the memory packs. So currently, our memory packs worked fine for our local election, and I sent them back to the vendor, and they have reviewed them, and they have checked them out, and they are operational. I was able to find that I had 2 additional ones here in the office, so now I have a total of 4 that seem to be working for the moment. I was able to source an additional 4 more memory packs from Medfield because they have just discontinued this equipment, and I am not sure of their status. So right now, in my possession, in the town's possession, I have 8 memory packs. So the election cycle is too far along to change our equipment for this upcoming primary. So we have to continue to use the Optech Eagles for that. But I am going to have to be prepared to have teams available, and I'm looking for volunteers to possibly hand count all or part of the election, which would be approximately 1,500 ballots. The memory packs are working right now. They hopefully will work when I get them in August to test the equipment, which is a normal thing that we have to do. We have to test the tabulators leading up to an election. But between then and the actual election, at any time, it's possible that they could fail. The elections division has, I'm working with them, and they said it's possible for Topsfield to upgrade to new equipment for the November 8th state election. So right now I've been working with the 2 vendors. There are only 2 vendors in Massachusetts who have certified equipment for Massachusetts to use in Massachusetts for elections, and they are LHS and ES&S. ES&S is our current vendor for the Eagles, the Optech Eagles that we use. And I've had recent demonstrations. I think Boyd has been by when I've been getting my demonstrations and seen it going on. And the other additional thing I want to mention is that we're now up to 2 precincts, which is a new thing. So that's just a new fact that we have to deal with. Just a little bit of background. Topsfield has used the Optech Eagles since the early 90s. This equipment has been around for 35 to 40 years. As of now, Topsfield, the vendor just told me this yesterday. I just had a vendor in yesterday. They told me that Topsfield is one of only 2 towns using Optech Eagles in the whole country. In 2021, there were still 5 Massachusetts municipalities using them, Springfield being the biggest one. They were a city, and they upgraded last year. And then that left 4 small towns using them. And like I said, Acushnet had a huge issue, and so they've upgraded. Medfield had already upgraded. The only one left is Sherborne, out in the western part of the state, and they're a 1 precinct town, and they're in the same situation we are. They have to go with the Optex for at least the primary. I'm not sure what they're planning to do yet for the November election. I had made a capital planning request for the fiscal year 2021 in anticipation of ranked choice voting, hoping to upgrade the equipment before then because this Octech Eagle equipment wouldn't have been able to do that. And before ranked choice voting was voted on, that capital request was, I don't know what the correct term is, denied or passed over or what it was. So FinCom had already kind of taken it off it was kind of passed over. So they wanted to wait and see what happened. Well, ranked choice voting didn't go through, but now we're in this position with this equipment. So that's basically about it.
Okay.
And that's where it stands. I did send to Debbie 2 quotes that I've gotten from the 2 vendors. I'm still working through, going through some of the lists and checking in with some of the other clerks who have recently changed to either one of these 2 tabulators to see, what their pros and cons were with them. They're both pretty much, the machines are pretty close to what they are. For us, it's for Topsfield, it will be something new and exciting. But, they basically do the same thing. They're newer technology. They are secure. They're very secure. They're up to date. They will have a lifespan of, 15 to 20 years probably. And, we're one of the last towns to move up to the equipment. There are still a few hand count towns in the state, but when it comes to equipment, it's just us in Sherborne that are the only ones not using these newer types of tabulators.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
A couple of questions, please. Beth, on the September primary, are you capable of handling it with the memory packages that you've got?
I'm hoping. I have no reason to believe that our current memory packs that are in working condition will stop working, but there's no guarantee that they will work. It's just a waiting game. When Springfield upgraded to new machines, they turned in all their available equipment back to the vendor. And I think that the vendor told me they got back 50 to 60 memory packs, and all of them are basically failing. They're just not working. So it's kind of an issue that's unfortunately just kind of come out of the blue and surprised the vendor. It surprised the state and the few towns that were left. I mean, I knew that once Springfield had upgraded their equipment, I felt that the state was probably going to very quickly go down the path of decertifying this equipment in Massachusetts, and that would make us have to upgrade our equipment. But I didn't anticipate that it would kind of go down in this urgent fashion.
If we get into a September primary and we have trouble with your memory packs, what do we got to do? Revert to hand counting?
Yes, that's exactly what will happen. So what I will do is I'm going to work with one of our local clerks here on the North Shore in Essex. And they were, up until like 2020, they were a hand count community. So I'm going to work with her on her process for hand counting, because they hand counted after every election. So I'm going to work with her for her process and techniques. And I will have to be prepared to, have extra people to come on at the end of the night. As I said, I'm looking for volunteers. For people to come in and, to be available in case we do have to hand count. I'm hoping that we do. I'm hoping it just goes off as a normal election and we're done. We'll just, do all the results as usual and we'll be done. But there is a chance that the memory packs could fail when the vendor tries to burn the information onto them. They could fail when they get to me and I do the test, which is required here in the office prior to the election, or they could fail a week later or so on election day.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the day or anytime during the day.
I've already told you that I would volunteer to hand count. Next point.
Beth, are you able to stop your share? Sorry to interrupt, Boyd.
Yep.
Yeah, I figure that out.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, we're almost there. We go.
There we are. Back to normal. I had a thought. Am I of the opinion that we might be able to use ARPA money for these machines?
Yeah. So, Mr. Jackson, we haven't had a meeting since this was identified by Ms. Willis with our ARPA working group. And as a team, we always discuss anything that we want to consider prior to formally asking the select board for consideration to fund it using ARPA. So that piece has not taken place yet. So I would not say right now that is, I would not advocate for it. I would not say that that's the request. I would say that after we meet, it could be the request. But as of right now, the reason for today's meeting was to mostly provide an update, and based on timing and the need of these machines and the election and the lead time and setup and training, we didn't want to miss the opportunity this month at this work session to at least explain the difficulties that we're facing. And that, yes, a funding source like ARPA could be the recommendation that we bring forward, but I would not offer that recommendation without talking with the ARPA team first.
Okay, ARPA maybe and maybe not. If maybe not, then where do we go from here? I think you've made the case for the fact that we're dealing with antique machinery. We don't know if it's going to survive. We don't know if it's going to work. We may have to do hand counts, but if we have to buy these machines, and I assume, by the way, Beth, if you tell me we might be able to get through the primary, we're not prepared, probably not prepared to handle a general election down the road a year or two.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. We are stuck with them. We are not, I don't want to mean stuck. We are committed to having to use them for September for sure.
I understand.
Whatever way we can. If we have to go through the same thing for November, we could. I'm not going to get a lot of sleep for the rest of the year, but that's what we have to do. That's what we'll do. It's, on the other hand, as a clerk, it's not ideal to think of changing equipment before a state election like that, for a governor and all the other offices that are on it. It's going to be a bit of a change for the voters because we're going to be going from drawing the arrow straight across to filling in an oval. So it's kind of, very similar to any tests that people take in school, academic school settings. So it will be a change for the voter. And I would never choose to do it at a November state election. Normally, you would plan something like this and roll it out at a local election, which is smaller, a little less stress. But yeah, and we also at the same time have the change to the 2 precincts. So there's going to be a lot of change, but with a little bit of marketing, I think that we can handle that with the voters. We'll have some time for November to get out, through the new social media and whatnot. Explain it to the residents and the voters and whatnot. But it's just the way the dice are falling right now.
Kevin, I think you already said, when are you meeting with the ARPA folks next?
Let me just double check that. I
I
believe
think you said next week.
it's Wednesday of next week. So we'll have the discussion there if it qualifies. And then if it's not, we're in a very unique situation, as Ms. Willis said, and we'll work as closely as we can with the state as well to see if there's anything that they could do to help us out from a funding standpoint. There's nothing that immediately comes to mind, but we would certainly look there next.
Well, that was my next question. If we can't use ARPA money, where's the money coming from? Kevin, you got a pocket full of it somewhere?
Unfortunately not, but we'll shake some trees and see if we can find something.
All right. Now, how many, if you're going to buy new machines, Beth, how many do you need? 2?
So the 2 quotes that I sent to Debbie that were up on board docs are pretty identical quotes. I've asked for two full machines that would be the tabulator and the bin that collects the ballots, and then 1 extra tabulator only as a spare, because we are moving to 2 precincts now. So there will be 1 for each precinct and then a spare.
How much money are you talking about?
So 1 quote came in at 17,000, I believe. Add it up. Where did it go?
14,900 for one, and I think 17,670 for the other.
For the other one, yeah. They're basically, the quotes are virtually identical.
You're talking 30 grand.
No, we picked one.
I'm talking under 20.
One or the other, Mr. Jackson. Those are the 2 bids we received for the scope of work.
2 different bids. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
If we found the money somewhere, could you have this ready to roll by September?
No, it's too late, unfortunately. The way the process works, ballots are already, the state has already started working on the ballots, and it's too late to really change it for the primary, unfortunately.
Okay. Enough said. If we find the money somewhere, can you have this baby ready to roll by November?
That's the plan. The state, said that they're willing to, there are laws about changing equipment and what the time frame has to be for that. The state is, encouraging me to get to them sooner rather than later in order to get this through for November, so that we won't be in the same situation for that election. So there's an imperative,
All right. Go ahead, Marshall.
Well, I was going to just say, did you have any other questions? I think the main thing is, let's see what ARPA comes up with, and then take it up after that.
Well, so I've got a couple too. So I'm confused. Is it the memory itself, or is it the battery in there? And if it's the battery, is this something we could go to one of these local battery places and they've done wonders on some of my antique equipment that use old batteries too.
Oh, here she comes.
Here I come. So these are the memory packs.
Yeah, looks like a hard drive to me.
It sure does.
Looks like an 8-track tape to me. This is what goes into the tabulator. So this has all of, has the ballot information stored on it. And they program it and they send it to us and we put it in. It has a battery in it. And those batteries, from what I understand from the vendor, they cannot get the batteries that go in these anymore. And they can't, and nobody has new whole memory packs either. It's past its shelf life.
Okay. And that was my other question, is these things do have a shelf life? Like you said 15 to 20 years for this new set?
Yeah. So these memory packs are the ones that I went to Medfield and picked up. And before she got rid of them, I ran down there and got them from her. And they have a sticker on it that says that a battery was changed in 2017. I was talking to the vendor and I said, so does that mean something? Is that like good news or something? And he said, not necessarily. I think that the batteries are more like on a 5-year type of a.
So it is the actual memory unit that's failing.
It's the memory unit. It's the battery in the memory unit, from what I understand from the vendor.
But since you can't get to it,
and they get to and they can't get new batteries. and you can't buy brand new ones of these with batteries in them.
So ultimately, the memory unit is failing because the battery inside it is failing and you can't get it.
Can't get,
Sounds
yeah.
like it.
Yes.
I'm not a salesman, but they have batteries for everything nowadays. How many of these do you need to run? Do you need all 8?
No, I have 8 because I have 8 because I'm hoping to have extra in case I need them for the primary. But we only need 2.
2 machines, yeah.
Yeah, I need to have 2 machines working on election day.
And I'm wondering, but having 8 means that our chances of being without something are lower. Does it
I'm just
make
trying
it
to increase my chances of, if a memory pack fails, say a memory pack is working today and it says it's fine, when they go to program it within the next couple of weeks, it may fail. So, okay, here, I have an extra one. And then once they send it to me, if all of a sudden it's not working, okay, use another one, get me another one, overnight it. So I was just trying to improve my chances of getting through September. So that's why I was able to source these, and
Really? And just in terms of implementation, it seems like if we do the new system now, there's a big rush even for November. Is it easier to cross our fingers with 8 of those to get through November's election and then have a much longer amount of time for implementation?
I talked about that with the vendor, and I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that, and they didn't really comfortable. They were like, if you can get like I said, November is really not ideal. In a real world, in a normal situation, I would never cut over for a state election, but it's the situation that we have. It's the cards I've been dealt. And so, if I have to try and get through November, I would like to. I'm just a little concerned. And part of me is in disbelief that all those memory packs that they got returned back from Springfield, none of them seem to be working. Why is that? Well, when you think about it logically, if there's shelf life and there's, battery life. And so I guess it is logical. I don't know why mine are still working. I haven't had trouble. But Acushnet, when theirs failed on them, they had nothing else available and the vendor had no extras. See, the vendor had extras that it would use, and they've run out of their stash of extras. It was an issue that, just came along. We're kind of the Optech Eagles. There were so few of us that sometimes, we were kind of the forgotten stepchild.
It's like having an iPhone too.
If I can summarize, one way or another, these things have an exceedingly limited shelf life. We have very old technology.
Right.
Sure, it may survive September. It may even survive November. But no matter what we're doing, we're challenging Father Time here. These guys are near death. So one way or another, we're going to have to plan to buy new machines.
They got to go.
And I guess, Beth, then given the rush to get it ready by November versus the risk of them failing by November, you're more comfortable rushing and getting them out by November than waiting.
I think so. It's not really what I would choose to do in a ever, but I think weighing the two issues, I think it would be better. I don't want to confuse the voter. I don't want to, it is going to be a big change. But I think it's the best way to run a flawless election. The best chances is changing out the equipment. Either vendor that we have, that we pick, their services are the same. There's the same sort of training leading up to it. And the day of the first election, it's typically typically they have somebody with you for your first election for the whole day to troubleshoot things should anything come up. And they were telling me yesterday, ES&S, who did Springfield, that they had people in Springfield ready to go to disperse to the different prime precincts to handle this, and they didn't get one single call. So, I mean, the new equipment is flawless, and personally, I'm excited about it because the Optech Eagles are very difficult to use with the increase of the mail-in voting. It's not as easy for me to control the type of pen that people use to mark their ballots, and the Optech Eagle doesn't recognize anything but this specific pen. Like, we can't even use different kinds of felt tip pens, never mind pencil or blue ink or anything. The new machines, either one of the vendors, they're much better at, and it'll make things easier with the mail-in ballots. So, I'm excited.
Okay.
And
Kevin,
the last question.
One other question, Lynn. Obviously, you've had significant correspondence and discussions with the vendor of our current machinery. Are they at all helpful in trying to help you through this mess, or are they leaving you out to blow in the wind?
They've been pretty good. It's been, I have to admit, I've been frustrated at times. And I'm weighing the different pros and cons of the actual machines, and on what they've been good to me for the most part, and the tech that they always have had to come out and maintain the equipment has been very responsive always over the years since I've been clerk. So I've enjoyed working with him in the past. So there is some relationship there, but I've been a little frustrated with how this issue has come out of the blue, honestly. But it is what it is. We've had our chances to upgrade. All the other towns have done it, and we're just the last one.
I asked that question because I'm kind of on the same page that Raphael is, that there are millions of people making batteries, and I can't believe that there is no.
But guys, at this point, this stuff is so old. If you're talking about fixing the battery inside a 40-year-old plastic case, I don't think you're focusing on the big picture.
Marshall, I'm only talking about what we can do until we get the new machinery.
All right.
I don't think we need to do anything if we have 8. But just one last question from me, Beth, I promise. You said the new ones, boom, like that, if ranked choice voting goes through, totally programmable, blah, 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 does all the math for everybody. Okay.
Yes, they're capable of handling ranked choice voting, which is not even on the docket right now for Massachusetts. That kind of has, for the moment, has come and gone. Yeah. But these two different vendors can handle that.
Okay.
Kevin, did you have a hopefully wrapping up point on this?
I actually was going to just kind of maybe hopefully summarize a little bit and just say, this has come up since the day I was here with our first capital plan. I was here 3 years ago. It was moved off. And I have to give so much credit to Clerk Willis for under financial constraints at certain times over the last couple of years to be willing to continue to try to find creative ways, like traveling to Medfield and Springfield to get backup batteries, used backup batteries, so that we can at least keep our head above water, at least the best we can. To steal a line from Chief Collins Brown, we truly are coupon shoppers as often as we can be. We do try to find ways to keep things working. We also go out of our way to find grants, and we've done a tremendous job in doing that, including Beth Willis, who received a grant, I think last year, a competitive grant that I know we were all very excited for her and for the town. I just, for what it's worth, funding source to be determined, but I fully support at this point in time, considering how imperative election integrity is, especially in 2022, that there's no risk of any perception of that we aren't doing it correctly or to the best of our abilities. That is the foundation of everything we do. And so I just want to let that be said. And I do appreciate the questions and I do appreciate the conversation, and we'll be coming back to you with a more formal request in the near future.
All right. Thank you, Beth, for taking the time to talk to us, and hopefully we can get this fixed. The last item on the agenda is meeting schedule revisions. I don't think we can really take this up with just three of us, since obviously we're talking about the schedule for the five of us. But the reason this is notable is we were on the countdown clock to the end of the great governor's order that we read at the top of every meeting. We are no longer at that countdown clock. The governor's order has been extended, not only, as far as I understand, all the way to the end of 2022, but in fact, the end of 2023. I will make note of, one thing, but it may not even. So here's what I know. There is discussion in the House and the Senate that it would require of towns throughout the Commonwealth to make meetings available in at least a hybrid fashion. So if right now this doesn't exist, right now we could, if we wanted, go back and do our meetings in person. But it seems as though the goal of the Commonwealth is to, at some point, like we've learned a lot of things during COVID, people learned that there are things that work better this way. You know, companies are getting rid of buildings and people are working remotely and all of that. The remote access to public meetings is pretty unanimously considered to be a good thing. So the Commonwealth is considering requiring that. The problem inherent in that is the technology involved could be very difficult to do. So we're not going to have a discussion on this right now because that hasn't happened, but that's kind of a big picture look at it. Right now, we have the ability to continue meeting remotely for the next roughly year and a half. Correct, Kevin? That's what the legislation says? Or is it just 2022?
So my
understanding, no, but I thought it was through 2022.
So we are very fortunate to have a town clerk who's very interested in this for many reasons. But my understanding is that the House and the Senate have taken up, as you said, Mr. Chair, and now they need to be reconciled to determine what the final bill between the two will look like. So I don't know if Clerk Willis, if you have anything to add to that, but that's just the kind of high level of where things are based on my text exchange with Senator Lovely's chief of staff earlier today.
Right. There's been a flurry of information going back and forth today. And as far as I know, there are the two bills, the Senate version and the House version, and they have not hashed that out yet. So
they have not reconciled those yet.
They have not reconciled. There's been nothing signed by the governor. And because of that, as far as it's concerned, it ends on the 15th. Not to say they're not going to sign it.
Tomorrow.
So
right.
As of right now, then, all right. So I was under the impression it had already been extended.
No.
Mainly because Kevin texted me and said it had already been extended.
I gave the board bad information. It was premature, but it was my apologies.
It's very likely. It's very likely.
Felt good about
I'm
really
sure.
About it.
I'm sure that I read in the Boston Globe 2 or 3 days ago about the fact that it was extended till the end of March of 2023.
Okay, I think what Beth is telling us and what I read in the Globe today is that's what's being discussed, but nothing has been signed. So that is an important point. So with that in mind, as of right now, and I think we need to make this, so I guess we do have to make this decision, or do we? When is our next meeting? Is it the one on the, what is it?
25th.
25th. So no, I guess technically we don't yet have to announce whether that is in person or Zoom. And I don't want to do that without a full board. So in the event that a governor's order does get signed that extends it, I will presume we're going to be in Zoom for that. And in fact, wait, I'm busy thinking now. So the only thing, in fact, we know for sure is that we would be able to meet in person. We don't technically know if we'd be allowed to meet in Zoom because nothing has been signed. So if nothing gets signed, we would have to meet in person. I have like 4 heads nodding at me. So I think you get to see me thinking through this live.
I wasn't sure if your screen was frozen or if the brain cells were.
Yeah, it's me thinking through what do we have to do right now, because we as a board couldn't discuss how we're going to meet on the 25th, because we would have to do that in a public forum, and we have no way to do that in a public forum. So if I'm thinking through this live, are we required effectively at this point to decide to meet in person on the 25th?
I believe I know Ms. Morong and Ms. Willis could either back me up or tell me I'm off on this, but my belief is when the meeting is posted, the location, whether it's a Zoom or in person, at that time will be what is recognized. For now, it's just an expectation that our meeting on the 25th is the date of our next meeting. So we'll have at a time. Ms. Willis, Ms. Morong, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That would be my interpretation of really the timeline. We have until 48 hours before the meeting to really make that call.
Right.
Okay.
We have a few meetings. We have a few meetings next week that are kind of in this transition period. And very late this afternoon, we did get an update from KP that gave us some kind of direction or of how maybe those could be handled as remote meetings. And that's for something that's already been posted. So I haven't seen anything to address something that hasn't been posted. And your meeting on the 25th has not been posted yet. I mean, I know it's on the online calendar, but that's not the official posting.
And you make an important allusion to the potential unfunded mandate for requiring hybrid access to meetings. Doesn't just apply to select, it applies to literally every single publicly posted meeting, which then when you start to consider the cost of the technology to set that up, it really becomes quite burdensome to the town.
And manpower.
Yep. So, all right. So we don't actually have to decide anything on our meeting schedule right now, which is good because there's only 3 of us here. But we'll keep our eyes and ears open for the next coming few days to see how this develops. So that concludes our agenda. It not being a regular meeting, there are no updates. Is there anyone else who has anything else? Mr. Hartunian does.
Very briefly, I just want to recognize the Board of Health, Wendy Hansberry and Chief Collins, who recently received recognition for their efforts during during COVID and the vaccination clinics that they perform for the regional vaccination clinics specifically. So I'll talk about that more at my updates in a couple of weeks, but it is recent, and I did want to make sure I said a big first thank you and how well deserved that work was and continues to be in the battle against COVID.
All right. Good job by them. Anything else, gentlemen?
I have nothing.
Okay. I am
Motion
open
to adjourn.
That's precisely what I'm open to. Mr. Jackson, a second on that?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. McDonald?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Hook? Aye. We are adjourned.